Hey there, y'all. Tim Risto here, host of the Creative Christians podcast, joining you once again for another episode of Tim Talks Christian Rock. Probably wondering, why is he wearing the sunglasses? Is he trying to be extra cool or something? No, it's a beautiful, gorgeous day here in Texas. The sun is out. It's streaming in my window. It's just a little too bright for these old eyes today. So you're going to have to put up with the shades look, at least for today's video. I know it's been a while since I've recorded. The last video I did was the Cabrini film review, which many of you may have seen. It went viral. I've got over 40,000 views on that, which for me is a lot. Lots of comments and engagement, lots of likes, lots of new subscribers even. And if you joined or subscribed to my channel as a result of the Cabrini film review video, thank you so much. And if you're watching today, thank you so much for watching. So I kind of took a little bit of a break to reassess things and look at rolling out future content to some of these new subscribers as well. Work got busy for me, so that took about a month and a half that I just could not even come up for air to do a social media video. But I'm back at it, and I've got a lot planned, including a long in development review of Deliverance, Camelot, and Smithereens. But for this video today, we're going to look at unique vinyls and CDs. I did a video last year looking at some of the unique vinyls and CDs in my collection, and that was pretty well received. Got some good comments and things, engagement on that. Thought, well, we're going to have to do this on a regular basis. I could probably do about 5 or 6 videos on unique vinyls and CDs in my current collection. Of course, I'm always adding to it, so this could probably be an ongoing series. But I thought, well, it's probably high time to cover a few more unique vinyls and CDs. So we're going to look at 5 vinyls today and 5 CDs. What I consider unique is just albums that, obviously some that are rare, some that may be expensive because they're rare or unique or unusual or out of print. Some may be autographed, some may be just unique in the artist or band's discography. Some may be colored vinyl. Some may just be unusual releases or limited releases, all sorts of things. It's kind of a broad definition of what I would deem unique, but it's stuff that's unique for me and my collection. You may agree, you may disagree. You may have some of these, you may be interested in some of these, but hopefully you'll find something of interest in what I share today. So let's dig in. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and share it with someone you love. All right, first up from 1980 is the band Arkangel and the album Warrior. This is a vinyl release from 1980, and this is a very, very cool album, really from the Jesus music, or Jesus music movement era, I guess you could say. And it's really a very unique, cool album. This one's getting a little rarer to find. I got this for about $20, and it was actually a pretty good find. It's in very good shape, really. But these are starting to run closer to probably, I've seen them for $35 and on up, and getting a little harder to find. And obviously, the more you spend, they're typically better copies in better condition. But anyway, this is by founder Kemper Crabb, who, quick promo here, if you listen to my Creative Christians podcast, available on Apple Podcasts and everywhere else, at the time of this recording, the current episode out features an interview with Kemper Crabb and also Frank Hart of Atomic Opera. Kemper was also a member of Atomic Opera. Kemper talks about the development of this album, the writing of some of the music, how the record deal came about, recording it, and also the sound, the style of music of this album. It's got kind of a medieval sound to it, Old English medieval sound to it, which was part of its unique style. And I asked Kemper about that, and he does talk about that in the episode. So head over to a podcast distributor and look for Creative Christians, the episode featuring Kemper Crabb and Frank Hart. Really a great interview. But this album, the album art, of course, is just classic album art from the day, and it's really, really cool. Front and back. And it's got this, like I said, this medieval sound to it. It's got a rock vibes. It's got some pop vibes, some orchestral and acoustic sounds to it. If you can find it with the insert, here it is with the band in kind of medieval garb dressed up. It's got all the credits on that side, and then it also opens up. The album is done in a wind face and fire face theme for each side. One side is wind face, one side is fire face. It's also kind of style of the time, but really some cool lyrics, some very well done music, and it's just a great album. The CD is really more rare than the vinyl, although, like I said, the vinyl's becoming more rare. But the CD, copies of that, which I think was put out by Millennium 8 Records, I don't know, decade or more ago, maybe, I'm not sure. Have to look that up on Discogs. But that goes for a couple $100 even. So it's very hard to find. I talked with Kemper, and he said, yeah, some of the prices that people charge for that album, he said, are just ridiculous. He said, I wouldn't pay that much for it. So, your mileage may vary as to what you're willing to pay, but this is an album that really deserves to be remastered and re-released on CD again, and a remastered vinyl would be awesome too. But Kemper's an amazing artist. He's done some great stuff. He was around in the Jesus music movement era, and has continued to record. One of his classic albums, or his masterpiece album, is Reliquarium. And I'll be talking about that in an upcoming Album of the Week video. It's very, very good. But this is right up there as well. And this is really where it all started. So Arkangel, Warrior, check it out. Next up is the album Battlefront by the band Crossfire. This is something that I actually found at a half-price books in the clearance bin for, I think, $1, $2, something like that. And I really didn't know anything about the band or about the album. I was intrigued by the album art and the band name, Crossfire. I thought, it kind of sounds like a Christian album, but looks like a pretty small label thing. It was by this Crossfire Ministries out of Arlington, Texas. This is from, what year is this? 1987 for this album. And I thought, well, for $1 or $2, I'll check it out. Looked at the song titles. There's, track 2 on the second side is Trust in the Lord. Track 1 was PTL, Praise the Lord. So I thought, okay, must be Christian. Could be really cheesy. I don't know. So took it home, listened to it, and it's actually in really pretty good shape. There's a couple little scratches, but every time I clean it, or a couple little skips, and every time I clean it, it seems to get better. So I think I can probably fully get it clean. But it's actually a neat album. As it turns out, it's very rare and kind of a much sought after vinyl version. The only album by this band, and it runs for about $50 or more on Discogs. There's not a lot of copies out there available, and it's kind of unique. It's got a more of a White Heart vibe to it, I'd say, maybe a little bit of Petra, a little bit more overt or kind of preachy a little bit in the lyrics, and I don't mean that too heavy-handed, but I just mean that it's probably a little bit more schmaltzy or something in the lyrics than a Petra or White Heart would be, but it's still really good. And the music's cool. There's some neat guitar solos. They're a little shorter, tighter, but it's pretty good. It's rock, a little bit of pop, maybe a couple ballads on here, but it's cool. The last song on side 2 is called On, and that one's probably one of my favorite ones right now. I need to give it a couple more listens, but this is probably another one of those gems from Christian rock history that needs to be, remastered and released on at least CD, maybe even a remastered vinyl too. But if you can find it, this is pretty cool, and I lucked out and got it for $2 at half-price books. So Crossfire, Battlefront, check it out if you can find it. All right, next up, I want to talk about Rez, or formerly known as Resurrection Band, and their 1988 album Silent Screams. This was really their first album after kind of, I guess you could say, kind of a brief hiatus. They didn't disband or anything, but after their previous album, Between Heaven and Hell, they lost Jim Denton, I guess retired from the band, and so they need to find a new bassist and kind of, reformulated the band a little bit. Roy Montroy joined. I guess he'd always kind of been a part of the band in different ways, shapes, and form over the years, but he became part of it, and after about a 3 or 4 year break, they came back with Silent Screams, which is actually a harder sound. They always had a rock sound and a hard rock sound, but here started the second half of their career, and they really took on an even more aggressive, harder sound from here through to the end, pretty much. So this was kind of their comeback album, I guess you could say, in a way, even though, again, they never disbanded as far as I know. So this is very cool. It's got great album artwork, really unique album artwork. The band looks really in good form. I love that band photo. That should be a poster. And it's a good album. It's just very good. But I bring it up because it's a little harder to find these days on vinyl. You can find it. I found this one for $10. Very pleased to find it at that price. But it's kind of going for more these days. I think probably about $50 or more I've seen currently at any copies that I've seen around. And obviously, again, the more you spend, the more you're probably going to get a better looking copy, or a copy in better condition. So it's unique in that regard. It's also kind of the last vinyl release by R.A.D band before they stopped doing vinyl releases. They did have one more. The album after this, Innocent Blood, was released on vinyl, but really only in the UK. It wasn't a US release, and so it's really hard to find now. I don't think there were that many copies, although I don't know for sure how many there were, but it seems to be very difficult to find. And it was a pretty straightforward release. It had the album art with the girl on the front, and then the back was the song lyrics on the back. There was no insert, you just had the vinyl, and then the lyrics were on the back of the album cover. So it wasn't anything fancy or overly special, but that was officially their last release, but this was really their last US release on vinyl. It's unique, I think, in that regard, and that it's becoming rare, too. It's due for a re-release on vinyl and CD as well. But by Ocean Records, there's the insert, which had the lyrics on it. Again, that's the last time they would do that on vinyl. So, and I'm thinking there's a good chance this will be coming back out on vinyl and CD, possibly through Girder. They've done all of the back catalog up through Between Heaven and Hell, the album before this one. And really when some of those albums happened, Gur, back several years ago, R.A.D's record label, had released Between Heaven and Hell on CD. And then about a year or so after that, Girder came out and released their CD, remastered CD, and their vinyl. Well, about a year or so ago, Gur released Innocent Blood on their version of CD, a remastered CD. And I'm wondering now, it's been just enough time, it seems like this would be a good time for Girder to start in this kind of second half of R.A.D's career and release Silent Screams, Innocent Blood, and Civil Rights on CD and vinyl. From after Innocent Blood, none of R.A.D's discography has been released on vinyl. So it would be perfect to complete the R.A.D discography on vinyl and remastered CD with Silent Screams moving forward. And I think that may be happening. This may be the year, maybe next year, I don't know, but I have a feeling Girder will be making that announcement sometime soon. Who knows? I don't have any inside info on that, but it just seems like a logical thing to do, and it kind of seems the timing is right. It's getting harder to find some of these later R.A.D albums, ironically. So now that they've got the whole first half of their discography done, logically, seems time to step into the second half. We'll see what happens there. But either way, it's a great album. R.A.D is that Chicago-based band that did great rock, hard rock, and Chicago-based blues style of music. Very good stuff, and this was a nice, aggressive album to step up from the first half of their career. Great album. Check it out if you're not familiar with it, or any of R.A.D's stuff, for that matter. You can't go wrong. All right, next up is Angelica. This was a great AOR 80s, 90s rock band. This particular album, their debut album, was released in 1989, I believe it was, but never released on vinyl, I don't believe. Or if it was a very limited release. So Girder remastered and released this limited vinyl release, or limited run vinyl release of the debut album on vinyl in 2019. And I think it was only 100 copies, I believe it was. and sold out relatively quickly. I missed out on that, but was able to pick up a copy for kind of a pretty penny recently. And you can still find a few copies out there for an even prettier penny. But I really, really was digging this album and enjoying the music on it. This debut album has Dennis Cameron as the guitarist, who's throughout Angelica's career. He's the kind of guiding force behind it, and really the only remaining member that's part of the band to this day, I think, if he's still recording. I'm not positive on that. But and this album is known for the vocals of Rob Rock on it. Ken Tamplin was involved as well, I think, producing this album. He did a song on here, I think the last track, but he's the one that brought Rob Rock on board to do the vocals for this album. This is the only album that Rob Rock did the vocals on with Angelica. I think they have 5 albums out. They basically had a different vocalist every album, and their last album was a instrumental thing that Dennis Cameron did. But this is really a very, very good album. And the reason I was willing to spend a little money on it too is, it's, besides the fact that it's a great album, is the vinyl release is really nice. It's got this great smoky gray, blue, purple, pink kind of multicolored vinyl. And it's a really nice edition. It feels like it's probably 180 gram vinyl. I'm not positive of that, but very nice. Limited release of only 100 copies. You can find them now starting at about $125 a pop. And those are usually ones that have some dings or dents in them too. So you're kind of getting the ends of that 100 copy run. And, you know, your mileage may vary if you want to spend $125 on it or not. Mine does have a little bit of a crease in the top corner. I didn't spend $125. Mine was much less than that. But it was a sole copy on eBay that I picked up. But it's a great album. I love it. I'm glad to own it. Their second album was also released on vinyl. I believe probably in the UK or something. It was a limited release. That's very hard to find. That has not been remastered to my knowledge or re-released. And then their third album, Lock, Stock, and Barrel from 1991, was not released on vinyl until, I think, 2019 when Gerda released this one. They also released that one. Copies of that are also very hard to find, although there are a few out there online if you look around. They're not as expensive as this. It's probably not as sought after of an album, but they probably still run you, $60 or more to get a copy of that. But Angelica's got great stuff, and this album in particular is just, Christian or not, it's great music and a great album. Worth getting a hold of. Again, depending upon your willingness to spend money. I suspect at some point we'll see this re-released, probably by Gerda, in another edition of vinyl at some point down the road. It's just popular enough, and I think could potentially sell well again for a second pressing of some sort. But we'll see. All right, next up is Motivik, Death of the Gunman. This was their 2020 album, but released by Rox Records on vinyl in 2023. So this is a pretty new band and a recent release. This is a thrash metal band, Motivik, with kind of some country western overtones to it, as the Death of the Gunman title and the rather interesting album art would suggest. It's got a really neat sound to it. The thrash elements are a little bit of a stretch for me. I like Deliverance and bands like that, but I'm a little bit more on the melodic thrash side. So when this one peaks at its most extreme thrash elements, which really aren't that bad, but it does stretch it a little bit for me. But it is interspersed often with some melodic elements and then even some instrumental little interlude tracks and things like that. Got some sound effects, kind of Western sound effects in there and things like that. It's really kind of a cool album. It's got 10 tracks on it, and it follows this theme of this Western theme, Death of the Gunman, and it's a very, very cool album. I really like it a lot, and it grows on me more and more every time I listen to it. Probably one of my more favorite, new bands or, newer bands and newer releases that is very intriguing. Even though it's from 2020, I'm just finding out about it. And this comes in a very, very limited release by Rox Records. Only 100 copies were pressed, I believe it was, but only 85 are available through Rox because I think 15 of the copies went to the band and crew. So it's 85 available. So very, very limited release. It's on black vinyl. Very nice edition. Comes with an insert with photos of the two guys that are, the primary band members, and of course the lyrics. Very cool sheet there. And it even comes with this lithograph, which is hand numbered and signed by the guys in the band, which is kind of a nice little bonus. It is cool album art, cool artwork. So it's kind of a nice little added bonus to get with it. It's not a very expensive album. I think it was on sale when I got it here with Rox for like $35 or something like that, normally $40. So it's a good deal, and it's a good album. Again, you have to like thrash metal, but there is some diversity to the musical styles of the album. So if you're interested in it, check it out. There's also a CD version of it available too, but I think this vinyl will, in time, probably become pretty rare considering it's only 85 copies released to the public. So cool album, worth checking out if you like thrash with some country western vibes to it. All right, and the last of the vinyl releases I'm going to talk about today is a classic from 1981, and that's Jerusalem's album Warrior. This is the Swedish version in their native tongue. Jerusalem is a Swedish band, and this is the version that's sung all in Swedish. It's called Krigsman, Warrior, but this was their I think initial release really, and then stuff is released in English after. But this is unique because it's that original version, and it's a gatefold, where the English release was a single sleeve release, and I have that one as well. But I was always kind of curious about the gatefold, which basically contains everything that the single release has. This artwork in here really was what was on the vinyl sleeve inside. This was both sides of that in the English release, so it just puts that inside the gatefold release. It's not a double album, it's still just a single vinyl release, but I like that it was gatefold, and so I wanted to get a copy of that. This one was pretty reasonable, and it's not in the absolute best shape. It's obviously the vinyl's poking through the bottom, and it's kind of a little bent, a little rough shape, but it was kind of a personal find. I love this album. Jerusalem's classic rock album from 81. They're just such a great band, and this is one of their, probably their masterpiece album, although they've got a lot of good stuff. They also brought out, I believe it was Pierced Records, in 2017, re-released this very album, the Swedish version of the album, in a gatefold release, remastered for vinyl. I wasn't aware of that until it was too late, and so it was sold out by the time I found it. So I have no idea how well that compares. Obviously, it's remastered. Probably sounds better. Probably in better shape, being new. But it's basically the same thing, just remastered and re-released. Kind of hope they do that again, but I don't know. I don't know how many copies there were of that, but it was on 180-gram vinyl. Missed out on that. So I had to at least go in search of the original release, and I'm happy to have that, along with the English single sleeve release that I've got as well. Great album by Jerusalem. All right, time to switch over to some unique CDs. And since we've been talking about Jerusalem, let's keep on the Jerusalem theme for a minute here yet. Jerusalem, of course, like many bands, has changed hands, bandmates over the years. Ulf Christensen was the, primary founder and the consistent one throughout, but there have been a few others, Dan Tibble and some others, that have been a part of the band's history more often than not. But anyway, the original Jerusalem band released their first two albums were Volume 1 and Volume 2. And so they had some great classic rock to it. And then came Warrior, the album I just showed you on vinyl. But they had written a ton of songs that were not recorded. A lot of fans heard live, but that never got recorded or released. So in the 90s, Jerusalem reformed with the original band members, or at least I think it was maybe the Volume 2 band members in particular, and went back and recorded a lot of those old songs that were written, I think, between 1977 and 85 or something like that. So they have the flavor and vibe of, how Ulf and others had written them back from those time periods, those decades, that era, and then recorded them with the original members in the 90s. And they released what was essentially Volume 3 and Volume 4 of albums. That's really kind of what they are. But instead of calling it Volume 3, this one from 97 was called Those Were the Days, and it's a really very good and very rare and hard to find at a good price CD. It was never released to vinyl. And I picked this up last year and was happy to get it. It's a really very good album. Love it a lot. Maybe one of my favorite Jerusalem albums of all time. So I got that, but I hadn't been able to find Volume 4, which is actually titled R.A.D, although it goes by Volume 4, I think is the Swedish pronunciation of it in Sweden. So it's kind of got some different titles, so to speak, but it is essentially Volume 4. But it's called R.A.D in the English version, and I hadn't been able to find a copy of that, at least not an inexpensive one. Finally got one the other week, and happy to add this to my collection. Again, rare, hard to find. This one is not quite as good as Those Were the Days, but there are some good tracks on here, and it's in fact, it's got a Swedish song on here too that's not translated to English. But this is the English version. They also have, as I mentioned, a Swedish version as well. But these two are both just really good albums. I think they should be remastered and released on CD in a wider distribution. And ideally, I'd love to see them released on vinyl because, again, Volume 1 and 2, their original albums are on vinyl. It'd be neat to have these, which are essentially Volume 3 and 4, on vinyl as well. Either way, these are good albums in the Jerusalem catalog that are deserving of far greater distribution than what they've gotten in the past. So maybe someday a Girder or somebody like them will release those. But they're unique, rare, hard to find, but they're good albums too. Good music from the, Jerusalem's always good, but these are some exceptionally good ones as well. All right, keeping with the Jerusalem front, their latest album is, and I always have trouble pronouncing it, but I think it's Stygn. It means stitch in English, but this is their latest album, which came out really at the tail end of last year, 2023. This is, again, the initial release, so it's in their native tongue, Swedish. And I was able to get this through a friend of mine. Shout out to Monty in Sweden, who was actually able to purchase this copy for me because there wasn't an American release yet, and I couldn't get it shipped directly overseas. So he lives there in Sweden, was able to purchase this for me very graciously. Thank you, Monty, and get a copy for me. And these were autographed by the band, so it's pretty cool. It's a good album, and I need to listen to it more, but I really enjoy it. There's supposedly a U.S. English version coming out probably soon, at least on CD. I was hoping for a vinyl release as well, but I know for sure they've confirmed a CD release. I guess if it sells well enough, maybe we'll see a vinyl issue out of it. But good album, deserves some more listening to on my part. Because I've had so much music to listen to. I've only listened to it about once or twice, but it's very good. Jerusalem's always good, and I especially love I think it was the opening track, Gut finns visst. But there's some good music on here as always with Jerusalem. So be watching for the English release, or if you can, snag a copy of the Swedish release because Jerusalem rocks. This next one is Prodigal Electric Eye 30th Anniversary Limited Edition. It's 3 CD set. It actually includes all three of Prodigal's albums, but it was released for the 30th anniversary of the Electric Eye album, which is probably their most popular album, although they're all excellent. This box set came out in 2014 by Silver Orb Media, which I believe is Prodigal's kind of own label, or one of the members of Prodigal's label, may have been Rick Fields. But each CD in this set was restored from the analog master tapes and remastered, as they say, to enhance the listening experience while maintaining the sonic integrity of the original recordings. So this is pretty cool. Like I said, it includes all three of the band's albums, plus the cover art, obviously Electric Eye on the front. If I can get this open here, you can see, well, I can take this off. You can see the first album's cover art there underneath that disc. And then Just Like Real Life, there's the Electric Eye disc, and there's Just Like Real Life's album there. So in the trays, you get the original album art for each of them. In addition, this came with a little booklet, which included some photos, not very often seen photos of the band in some cases, a little write-up essay there, track listings, and a few things like that. I really like that photo there of the band. That's kind of cool. It's one I'd never seen before. There was also a card in here which talked about the mastering process and included this artwork by Lloyd Bowman, which is kind of his original concept that he drew for the Electric Eye album cover artwork. So that's kind of neat to have. And supposedly, according to Discogs.com, I noticed there was a note there that said there was special artwork cards depicting a portion of the three albums inserted randomly in some of these box sets. And there was a special artwork signed by the band members inserted randomly. I've never seen the random art. It didn't come with my copy here that I got, but I've never seen that artwork. I assume it does indeed exist. According to Discogs, it does. So if any of you watching out there has this box set and has the artwork, I'd be curious to know what the artwork is, what it looks like. But I don't have a copy, never seen it, so I don't know exactly what that is. Either way, this is a nice box set. I did a video last year on Prodigal's Electric Eye album, a very thorough one, my album of the week, actually, and talked about this box set. At the time, I didn't have this box set. I didn't own a copy of it. Since then, I was able to acquire this copy, and I managed to score this one on Amazon last year for about $30. And that was the last time I saw it even at a remotely affordable price. Currently, I think there's one available on Amazon listed for $200. There's even one on eBay for $340. And then there's another one on eBay for, I think it's $85 plus $20 shipping. And those are the only copies I'm aware of that are for sale. So it's unique because it's a rare, hard to find box set. And this is from 2014, like I said. Since then, Girder Records has, or Girder Music has remastered and released each of those albums individually at a much more affordable prices. I think about $15 a piece. Oftentimes they're on sale for less. So, you can get a hold of the albums cheaper and in nice editions, but I really did want this box set, and finding it for $30 to me was a very reasonable way to add it to my collection. I love the band, and they don't have that many releases of their work out there. They've got the vinyl, they've got this box set on CD, and then the individual releases now from Girder, plus the original cassettes on the red plastic cassette plastic, from back in the 80s that they were released on. I originally had those when I first got into Prodigal. I may track some of those down one day and get those. But other than that, that's really all the releases that there are. There's the remastered vinyl of Electric Eye, and then the original vinyl of all three of those. So they don't have a ton of releases. I mean, they only have the three albums anyway. But since I'm such a fan of the band, I wouldn't mind collecting all the different forms of media that the album was released in. But that's Electric Eye. Actually, the whole Prodigal catalog, and it's a really neat box set. If you can find it at a reasonable price, it's fun to pick up. But if you've got the girder releases, you've basically got the same thing. All right, second to last CD for this video is Lost Dog's Old Angel. This is the latest and quite likely the last release from the Lost Dogs. I don't have any inside knowledge on that, but this came out in 2010. Haven't heard hide nor hair from them since. I think they're all kind of getting up there. I think there was maybe some contentiousness during the making of this album, or a video travelogue that was being made along with this, that I get the sense there was some tension with the bandmates. So maybe, this was kind of the capper for them. But it's a cool album. It's kind of a travelogue, much like their first album was, Scenic Routes. Little different version, slightly different version of the band from that. I think we're 10 albums in here. And this is a cool travelogue kind of album, but it's really cool. This was a digipack release. It's very hard to find on CD. You can find it digitally, of course. There was not a vinyl release. This was the only physical media release there was, and it's just very difficult to find. I was able to get this copy at a reasonable price that kind of popped up on Discogs, I think it was. But it's a very simple release, nothing super fancy. It's got the CD, the trifold, digipack, and then a little booklet with mainly credits. I don't think there's lyrics or anything on it, but so it's kind of neat, but just hard to find. Originally, when I first started looking for it, couldn't find it at all, and then when I did find it, it was usually at a really expensive price. But this one I got pretty reasonably. And again, I think this may be it for Lost Dogs, so it's nice to have to kind of cap off their discography. They're a great band, formed from members of different bands, The Choir, Daniel Amos, Adam again, and others. So unique album. Got a rock, acoustic, blues, and folk kind of vibe to it. But great band, great music. You can't go wrong with any one of their albums. But I suspect Old Angel is probably it for them. Okay, and last but not least is Trenches of Rock. This was the documentary film about the band Bloodgood, produced by the band Bloodgood. This is the soundtrack CD for that documentary film. It's unique because there aren't many documentaries about Christian rock and heavy metal bands. Stripers may be an exception, but there just are not many at all, much less soundtracks to documentaries about Christian rock artists or bands. 23 tracks on here, and it's a little bit of an odd album because, some of them are full tracks, some of them are partial tracks. It's a soundtrack. So it's how these things were used in the documentary that they appear on here. It's not designed really as a complete album as much as it is just a representation of the soundtrack that they used for the documentary. So some of the songs are familiar and are complete. Some of them are more stylized and they're just excerpts of songs. Some have vocals, some don't. There's, I think, about 4 tracks on here that are kind of music created by the band, usually pretty short bits that were used as kind of transitional scenes or for specific short scenes in the documentary. But it's kind of unique. I like having it. The mixes are all different, so they're not really, most of them are not from the albums that they originally came from. And again, there is some extra music on here too. So a little bit odd in that sense, not a have-to-have album, but if you love Bloodgood and if you liked Trenches of Rock, which is really a very good documentary, I'd recommend picking this up. Not sure how much it's going for. It's harder to find, probably about $20 or so. It was originally, I think, around 15. You can get it through Bloodgood's Trenches of Rock documentary film website at one point. I don't think it's available there anymore. Maybe hard to track down a copy, but again, kind of unique. Not something you're going to sit down and listen to from beginning to end, but again, if you're a Bloodgood fan, I'd recommend picking it up. All right, y'all, that's all I got for today. Hopefully you found something of interest here in some of these selections of unique vinyl and CDs from my collection. Perhaps you have some of these or are interested in some of these. Feel free to comment below about any of this, about this video, about these bands and their albums, or about anything from your collection. I would love to hear from you. We'll be back soon with another album of the week, as well as an album review of Deliverance's Camelot and Smithereens. That's a long gestating review I've been wanting to do for a while. Finally getting that out the door, so keep an eye for that coming out soon. There'll be lots more videos related to film and Christian culture as well on my channel, so keep an eye out for all that. And don't forget to listen to Creative Christians Podcast over on Apple Podcasts and podcast distributors everywhere. I'm Tim Risto. See you next time. Don't forget to stay in God's Word and go out and listen to some good Christian rock. Till next time. See you later. Bye-bye.